Before the Flood, The Fall of Atlantis, by Matson. Chapter 12, The Cull of Kings. The central arena of the Golden Palace seemed to breathe with a malevolent, living hunger as the 5 surviving kings stepped onto the blood-stained sand. The once pristine fighting pit had already been transformed by prior rounds into a scarred wasteland of craters, half-flooded channels, petrified patches, and glassy, vitrified stretches that reflected torchlight like broken mirrors. The air was oppressively thick, almost unbreathable, a choking miasma of myrrh, frankincense, the coppery reek of spilled entrails and scorched flesh, and the sickly sweet undertone of pharmacia vapors drifting lazily from censers swung by masked priests. These elixirs induced false raptures and spiritual hunger among the masses, turning 40,000 spectators into a single frenzied organism. Their chants rose in a deafening rhythmic roar that vibrated the marble tiers. Kings of flesh, kings of blood, let the strong devour the weak for the glory of the Watchers and Ra'av's eternal famine. Faces flushed with ecstatic bloodlust, eyes glassy from inhaled stimulants, some spectators climbed over one another, trampling the weak in their eagerness for a better view. Vendors had abandoned their wares entirely, roasted meats cooled untouched, wine spilled forgotten. The entire island felt poised on the brink of cataclysm, as though the very stones whispered of the judgment to come. Leon stood among the 5 blue flames flickering low and wary along his forearms like sentinel flames against encroaching darkness. The scars inflicted by Kyon's gifts had deepened alarmingly since the duel with Valthor, glowing sapphire tributaries now traced across his shoulders and down toward his elbows, pulsing visibly in time with his racing heartbeat and sending relentless waves of fiery ache through muscle, tendon, and bone. Each throb carried the Watcher's rumbling voice, half-affectionate growl laced with darker promise. You have surpassed them all, pup. Look upon these so-called kings. They are insects beneath your flame. Embrace the full power. Claim godhood and end this farce. The temptation tugged insistently at the edges of his mind, amplified by the glowing corruption that now leaked faint blue light through gaps in his scorched bronze plate. He tightened his grip on Stelios's iron-studded club, the weapon a tangible link to his fallen brother's loyalty. The olive branch token from the groves of Calliste rested warm against his heart beneath the armor, its living wood a quiet counter to the growing spiritual weight pressing down on Atlantis. Memories flashed unbidden. Stelios's final roar as he drove the club into his own chest so Leon might claim Ring 7 unbloodied by further fratricide. Lysandros's calm, fractured acceptance in his last moments, Piran's reckless laughter turning to screams as his life force charred away, Boreas's quiet wind shielding them one final time. Grief twisted like a blade in Leon's chest, but he channeled it into resolve. The Creator had not sent him here to mourn lost friends, but to topple an empire of false gods. Strengthen me, he prayed silently, the ancient words of the line of Seth rising like cool water amid the suffocating dread. Let not the temptations of Kyon nor the mockery of giants break what you have ordained. The vision of sinking rings and rising waves burns clear. Prince Thalorian moved with predatory grace at the head of the Cull, a 14-foot colossus of fused crustacean armor and perpetual seawater. Iridescent plates of deep ocean blue, emerald, and pearl white glistened wetly, chitin grinding subtly with every motion as the corruption tightened its hold. His massive pincer claws clicked rhythmically, already extending into spear-like blades. King Titanor lumbered beside him, the outermost ring's brutal enforcer, his magnetically unstable body surrounded by a chaotic orbit of bronze clasps, stray weapons, and arena debris that hummed with dangerous energy. King Sableon advanced in brooding silence, extra-armored limbs sprouting grotesquely from his torso like living tumors of chitin and stone. King Dravok limped forward, northern geomancer bones grinding like millstones, cracks spider-webbing visibly across his frame with every step. The priest in flowing blood-red robes, face hidden behind a mask of gold and polished bone, ascended the dais. Hidden Mancy workings amplified his voice into booming judgment that echoed through every corridor and tier of the palace. The 5 victors of round 1 now enter the greater Cull, a battle royale of elemental fury and raw might until only one remains standing. That champion shall face Poseidon himself for the High Kingship of Atlantis. All gifts of the 3 orders, Pharmacia's subtle manipulations, Altering's transformation of flesh, Mancy's command of the elements, shall clash in final bloody judgment. The Watchers demand rivers of blood. Let the body prove its inevitable failure once more, exactly as foretold on Mount Hermon. The great conch horn, massive as a grown man's torso and polished to a lethal sheen, sounded its deep, mournful blast. The Cull ignited in an instant. Thalorian struck first with imperious command. He slammed one massive pincer into the sand, and the island's central waterways answered like obedient hounds. Hidden canals beneath the arena floor erupted in violent geysers, flooding entire sections of the pit in churning, waist-deep torrents. Pressurized blades of seawater sliced through the air with lethal precision, seeking arteries and joints. The favorite son moved like a conductor of destruction, orchestrating floods that eroded armor and swept lesser debris into crushing whirlpools. His fused crustacean plates glistened, but observers could see the growing strain, the armor tightening around joints, movement becoming fractionally more laborious as corruption fused him ever deeper with his second skin. King Titanor laughed with brutal glee and invoked gigamancy. Gravity warped in localized spheres around him, first crushing downward with bone-grinding weight, then reversing violently to hurl nearby boulders, arena rubble, and even screaming slave attendants skyward before smashing them into the marble tiers with sickening impacts. Metal objects orbiting his unstable form became deadly projectiles, whistling through the chaos like guided spears. His body trembled with the effort. Magnetic instability worsened visibly, causing more debris to fly erratically and drawing blood from superficial cuts as his own power turned against him. King Sableon charged with silent, methodical brutality. Extra-armored limbs sprouted and lengthened from his torso, thick with stone-like hide that shrugged off water blades and gravity fluctuations alike. He waded through Thalorian's flood like a living siege engine, extra appendages crushing anything within reach, stone limbs pulverizing rubble, chitinous claws raking deep gouges into opponents' defenses. King Dravok, the northern geomancer, countered by tearing open yawning pits beneath his enemy's feet and hurling massive boulders ripped from the arena walls themselves. His brittle bones groaned and cracked audibly with every invocation, dust sifting from fresh fractures as prolonged geomancy turned his skeleton to living stone. Leon launched skyward on wings of bright blue flame, gliding high above the initial maelstrom. From this aerial vantage, the horror unfolded in panoramic savagery. Thalorian's aquamantic waves crashed against Sableon's armored bulk, eroding plates with corrosive salt water, accelerated by lingering Pharmacia residues from earlier rounds. Titanor's gravity fields collided with Dravok's pits in chaotic eruptions of sand and stone. Blood sprayed in wide, arterial fans across the arena as the kings tore into one another. The crowd's ecstasy bordered on religious mania. Some spectators wept with rapturous joy, others screamed themselves hoarse, trampling the fallen in their frenzy. Pharmacia vapors thickened, inducing hallucinations of glory and false loyalty that made the stands themselves seem alive with writhing shadows. A pressurized water blade from Thalorian streaked toward Leon like a spear of the deep. He folded one flaming wing and executed a sharp roll mid-air, the blade slicing past with a hiss that singed the edge of his azure aura. Kyon's voice surged stronger in his mind, amplified by the chaos. "They are beneath you, pup. Unleash the full storm. Become the god they already cheer." The glowing scars throbbed in agreement, tempting him to pour unchecked power into wings and projectiles, to dominate the sky as an untouchable force. Leon clenched his jaw against the pain and whispered the prayer once more, the olive token flaring with gentle, defiant warmth against his chest. "Not by my strength alone. Yours be done." He dove toward Titanor, the most immediate brute threat. The Enforcer sensed the descent and reversed gravity beneath Leon's trajectory. The world lurched sickeningly. Leon's stomach dropped as he was hurled upward at terrifying speed toward the palace dome. Spectators gasped and pointed as the Tanaju warrior became a distant speck of blue fire against the vaulted ceiling. At the apex, Leon spread his flaming wings wide, blue flames roaring brighter than ever. He channeled every ounce of inherited Guff strength and Kyon's gift into a controlled dive, plummeting like a comet of azure judgment. Titanor attempted to redirect the gravity field again, but Leon's enhanced perception, honed by repeated altering invocations, allowed him to anticipate the shift. He adjusted mid-dive and slammed into the giant with both flaming fists. The impact exploded outward in a cratering shockwave that vitrified sand for yards around them and sent Titanor's orbiting metal objects flying wildly like shrapnel. Titanor roared, meeting Leon's altering enhanced might with raw Nephilim power. They grappled in a whirlwind of devastating blows, fists like battering rams, gravity fluctuating wildly between crushing weight and disorienting weightlessness. Leon's blue flames seared the giant's skin, superheating armor plates and forcing painful releases. A condensed projectile of azure fire struck Titanor's shoulder, cracking bone and eliciting a bellow that shook the arena. Yet the Enforcer was relentless. He warped gravity on a massive boulder previously torn free by Dravok, smashing it toward Leon at lethal velocity. Leon glided aside at the final instant, wings beating powerfully, and retaliated with a sweeping arc of flame that scorched Titanor's flank and drew fresh blood. Across the flooded and cratered battlefield, the other kings clashed in a nightmarish symphony of corruption and power. Sableon's extra limbs tore into Dravok with mechanical precision, petrified stone grinding against fused chitin in sparks and dust. Dravok opened a yawning chasm beneath the multi-limbed warrior, but Sableon anchored himself with additional appendages and retaliated by crushing Dravok's already brittle leg with a stone-reinforced fist. The Northerner's earthy scream cut through the roar of the crowd as fresh fractures spiderwebbed up his thigh. Thalorian exploited the distraction, flooding Dravok's position with corrosive seawater that eroded geomancy anchors and weakened Sableon's outer plates. The favorite son's pincer claws extended into lethal spears, clicking with cold satisfaction as he orchestrated the carnage like a grand maestro conducting an orchestra of death. His fused armor tightened further with every invocation, joints grinding audibly, yet his shrewd eyes never left Leon. Calculating, always calculating. Leon broke from Titanor to support the wider fight. He hurled a barrage of blue projectiles at Sableon's exposed back, the superheated flames cracking stone plates and drawing the silent king's wrath. Sableon turned with terrifying speed, extra limbs lashing out like living whips. One chitinous appendage clipped Leon's left wing, sending him into a spiraling tumble. He recovered with a desperate glide, landing near the edge of one of Dravok's yawning pits. The geomancer, limping badly and trailing dust from his fractures, seized the opening and petrified the sand around Leon's feet into iron-hard traps. Simultaneously, Titanor reversed gravity directly beneath him. The combined assault nearly proved fatal. Leon felt the ground lock around his sandals, while the sky yanked him upward. His body screamed in protest. With a roar born of faith as much as fury, Leon invoked Kyon with everything he possessed. Blue flames erupted in a blazing protective aura, superheating and shattering the petrified sand, while his wings beat furiously against the reversed gravity. The effort sent fresh spikes of corruption racing through his arms. The glowing scars spread visibly further down toward his wrists, pulsing with inner sapphire light that bordered on blinding. Pain lanced through every nerve, vision blurring momentarily, but he broke free in a burst of azure fire and launched skyward. From on high, he targeted the weakened Dravok. A massive blue flame lance, condensed with the full strength of his bloodline and divine resolve, streaked downward like the judgment of heaven itself. It struck the geomancer's chest dead center, exploding through brittle stone and bone in a shower of dust and gore. Dravok collapsed with a final grinding, earthy scream, his body half petrified even in death, a monument to the failure of the orders. The Cull narrowed to 4 amid the crowd's thunderous approval. Titanor bellowed in primal fury and charged Thalorian, gravity fields warping the battlefield into a deadly kaleidoscope. Massive chunks of arena wall and sand levitated, becoming guided missiles. Thalorian countered with aquamantic mastery, summoning a towering wave that crashed against the unstable fields. Water met warped gravity in explosive chaos, spraying spectators in the lower tiers and turning sections of the pit into a churning maelstrom of blood and brine. Sableon waded into the heart of the fray, extra limbs tearing at both giants with relentless efficiency. His fused form was a horror of proliferating mutations, new stone growths pushing outward, extra limbs twitching with independent hunger. Leon circled above like a bird of judgment, wings beating steadily, blue flames illuminating the depravity below. The Egyptian giants' booming laughter rolled down from their crystal boxes like profane thunder. "Look at them!" Sobek roared, massive jaws clacking wetly as he feasted on a fresh platter of sacrificial meat. "The runt's bloodline tears itself apart for our amusement. Dung will weep when his favorite son falls." Amun-Ra's crystal growths arced brighter with stolen lightning. Horus's multifaceted eye whirred and clicked, capturing every detail for later mockery in the Black Land. Isis Tefnut's water-rippling skin shimmered with dark delight. "The body fails so poetically," Thoth Machshava murmured, femur stylus scratching furiously on clay tablets. "Mind fractures, flesh twists, spirit starves, exactly as the covenants promised." Leon ignored the giant's contempt, focusing on the divine mandate seared into his soul. He dove into the melee, targeting Sableon's vulnerabilities with surgical precision. The multi-limbed king was a nightmare engine of fused altering power, stone hide shrugging off flame and water, extra arms striking with crushing, unpredictable force. Leon used his aerial mobility to remain just out of reach, hurling precise blue projectiles that chipped joints and cracked plates. One strike severed the tip of a lower limb, drawing a rare grunt of pain from the otherwise silent warrior. Sableon retaliated by leaping, powered by raw, altering strength, and swiping at Leon midair. The blow connected glancingly, raking across Leon's side and denting bronze while drawing blood. He tumbled across the sand, rolling to his feet with club in hand, flames roaring brighter. The corruption surged painfully. Kyon's whispers grew louder, promising relief from the agony if only he would surrender fully to the power. The glowing scars now extended toward his hands, blue light visible even through gauntlets, tempting him with visions of effortless dominion. Yet the olive token burned warmer against his heart. A faint, protective breeze stirred, perhaps an echo of Boreas's lingering aromancy or the Creator's subtle answer, rustling the token's leaves. Obedience above all, Leon reminded himself through gritted teeth. One man, obedient, can topple empires built on rebellion. Renewed by faith, Leon charged Sableon directly. Blue flames coated Stelios's club as he swung in wide, devastating arcs. Each impact against the stone hide sent shockwaves rippling through the arena, cracking plates and staggering the multi-limbed horror. Sableon's extra limbs grabbed desperately, but Leon's enhanced speed and agility allowed him to duck, weave, and counter. Thalorian, sensing advantage, flooded the immediate area, attempting to drown both combatants. Leon glided above the rising waters, while Sableon anchored himself with additional limbs. Titanor joined the assault on Sableon, gravity crushing downward from above, while Leon hammered from the flank with flame and club. The multi-limbed king fought with silent, methodical rage, but the combined pressure of three fronts overwhelmed him. Leon delivered the decisive strike, a diving, wing-assisted blow with the flaming club that shattered Sableon's central torso plating and drove superheated azure fire deep into vulnerable flesh beneath. Sableon collapsed in a twitching heap of extra limbs and cracking stone, appendages curling inward like dying spiders, even as his stone hide began to petrify further in death. Three kings remained amid the ruined arena: Leon, Thalorian, and Titanor. The once magnificent fighting pit now resembled a vision of the prophesied flood. Flooded channels, shattered stone, vitrified glass reflecting hellish torchlight, blood flowing in dark rivers that mixed with seawater. The crowd's frenzy had reached hysterical peaks. Some spectators foamed at the mouth from over-inhaled vapors, others wept in religious ecstasy or trampled one another without remorse. In the luxury boxes, the Egyptian giants leaned forward eagerly, their colossal forms casting long shadows over the spectacle. "Exquisite," Sobek bellowed. "The dog has slain another. Flesh fails so beautifully." Thalorian and Titanor turned their full attention to Leon. The favorite son unleashed a cataclysmic maelstrom, canals erupting in towering waves that threatened to flood the entire central palace level. Pressurized blades sliced the air while his pincer claws extended into spear-like weapons. Titanor warped gravity into a deadly kaleidoscope, levitating massive debris into guided barrages. Leon took to the air, wings beating powerfully, blue flames forming a protective, searing aura. He weaved through the storm with desperate grace, hurling projectiles that forced Thalorian to divert water into defensive shields and Titanor to redirect his chaotic orbit. The three-way duel stretched into an epic, grueling ballet of elemental fury and unyielding will. Leon's body screamed with every invocation. The scars now covered much of his forearms and crept toward his hands, blue light leaking like molten veins. Pain blurred his vision at the edges, but the olive token and memories of his fallen team sustained him. He targeted Titanor first, using superior mobility to stay beyond easy gravity manipulation. Repeated precise strikes weakened the enforcer's unstable form until a final diving assault, wings fully extended, club wreathed in roaring azure fire, caved in Titanor's chest plate with a thunderous crack. The giant enforcer collapsed with a final earth-shaking roar, metal objects clattering lifelessly around his broken body. Only Thalorian remained. The favorite son regarded Leon across the devastated, flooded arena. Seawater dripped steadily from his fused armor, claws clicking with cold calculation. "You fight with something beyond the Watcher's gifts," Tanaju, Thalorian called, voice carrying the wet grind of chitin and the roar of waves. A vision, perhaps, but the sea takes all things in time. Even the dreams of mortal men drown. Thalorian unleashed his full hybrid arsenal. The arena became a tempest of water and chitin, towering waves, crushing whirlpools, spear-like extensions of his armor. Leon met the assault head-on, blue flames clashing against aquamantic fury in a blinding cataclysm that lit the entire palace like a second sun. He glided through the maelstrom, projectiles piercing water shields, wings carrying him above crushing currents. The pain in his scars became nearly unbearable as corruption spread, but obedience and the quiet hope of the remnant held him steadfast. In the decisive exchange, Leon dove through a momentary gap in Thalorion's defenses, striking with a combination of flaming fists and club that superheated the crustacean armor and cracked plates near critical joints. Thalorion staggered, seawater boiling around him in steam, but the Nephilim prince's ancient bloodline and raw resilience kept him from falling. The Cull's rules allowed the last standing to advance, and Thalorion's survival ensured a complicated path forward. The priest declared the greater Cull concluded. Leon stood as the primary victor, bloodied and scarred but unbowed, blue flames flickering defiantly. Exhaustion crashed over him as the flames guttered. Servants rushed forward, among them veiled remnant allies murmuring prayers and pressing fresh herbs into his hands. "The groves remember," one whispered. "The island trembles. Judgment nears." High above in the central temple, Poseidon's furious presence stirred. The true test loomed. Yet, amid the roaring crowd and the giants' mocking laughter, Leon felt the first tremors of divine purpose. One obedient man had survived the Cull. The fall of Atlantis gathered like a tidal wave on the horizon. All flesh is grass, the grass withers. But the word of the Creator endures forever. This has been an unabridged audio production of Before the Flood, The Fall of Atlantis. Chapter 12, The Cull of Kings, by Matson. All rights reserved by Matson, LLC. Copyright Matson, LLC 2026. If you enjoyed this production, please like, share, and subscribe. Available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Follow the author at Matson for updates. Links in the description.